Life After the Fight is a show that speaks to everyday issues pertaining to our mind, body, and soul. We will address topics ranging from mental health, self care, fatherhood, family, relationships, and more. Our goal is to encourage listeners to keep fighting through the obstacles, challenges, and struggles. The focal point is simple: seek a fresh perspective, become teachable, and improve your overall health and wellness. If you're craving more growth and development, this podcast is for you.
So what's up, man?
Not much, man. It's good to be back.
Oh, yes.
I'm happy for another occasion for us to chop it up a little bit.
Oh, wow. Well, I just want to know how your weekend was, man.
My weekend was great. It's Father's Day weekend. I went back, saw family on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., and then went and saw my grandchildren in a little town called Farmville, Virginia.
Wow, Farmville.
Yeah.
I've never heard of Farmville.
Saw some cows, saw a couple of deer.
Yeah?
It was a definite different change of pace from the proverbial concrete jungle that I'm used to living in Los Angeles. Although I digress because living in a beach city, I'm not necessarily in the urban sprawl, as it were. So
Yes.
it was good. I needed a change of pace, different scenery, and I went back, got refreshed, and now I'm here and ready to go.
That's good.
How was your weekend?
Oh, my weekend was good, man. I was able to do a little outdoor activities. Juneteenth festivals were all over the place this weekend.
Okay.
But that wasn't the main highlight. The main highlight was I did something I haven't done in a while, and that was a good hike, and a good nature hike.
For you, where'd you go?
I went actually right off the beach, San Pedro, borderline, Palos Verdes.
Okay.
And it was a interesting hike. Went with a friend of mine, and it was amazing because one, I didn't realize that the canyons in the beach run so deep through through Palos Verdes and San Pedro, but more importantly, the whole track, or should I say the whole trail, was challenging, but I was able to make it.
Okay.
It was steep, had some deep parts in it, but caught my breath a couple of times, had a little breathe, and then I looked at the water. I was looking at the water. I was able to get refreshed because it was overcast.
Gotcha.
Then you had a little bit of, a little drizzle.
Okay.
So that was good, but for the most part, it was
probably a little breeze off the ocean.
Oh, it was. Okay. It was 3.2 miles that I did.
Wow.
And I was hiking. Man, I ain't done a hike in I don't know. Well, I shouldn't say I don't know how long. It's been a couple of years, but.
And for the audience listening that can't see us, we happen to be two men of color. So don't be fooled by the fact that only white men hike, okay? We hike too.
Yeah. Yeah, we hike too. And it was great. I'm actually going to start doing that more often because what I realized, in addition to me already doing physical fitness as it is, because, for those who don't know, I do fitness exercise classes and I'm a personal trainer. And so I want to see how I was going to react to this, to this trail, only because I haven't done it before.
Okay.
And when I saw it, it was deep, narrow, then it shot straight up, and it was very challenging. And so what I had to remember was, number one, I have muscle memory.
Okay.
Number two, I'm going to say I'm going to make it regardless if I think I can't. And number three, I'm going to take my time. Now, I saw other people on the trail going pretty fast. Now, quite naturally, some probably do this on a regular basis.
Of course.
Since this is my first one at this particular, location, I was like, you know what? I'm not in a rush. Let me take my time.
And you want to navigate your terrain.
Oh, yes.
Because if you injure yourself,
man,
then that's weeks of not being on that trail.
Yes. Well, of course, I stretched very well before I, got there. But I took my time.
Okay.
And based on the rocks and how they were positioned, with the dirt and the gravel, it was all dirt and rocks. Okay. And so I was like, wow, this is interesting. I said, let me just take my time. And when I got halfway through that the biggest hike up, it was about at least 200 feet up. And so I had to kind of reminds us of the sand dunes we used to do. Remember right there off of Manhattan
Dude,
Beach?
right off
Man,
of
we used to do that. It was
Manhattan Beach and Rose Creek.
I couldn't stand you when you would literally leave me behind, but then I was able to climb, do time. But I digress. But when I got halfway up, had to stop and take, felt myself breathing heavy, right? So I said, let me just relax because I can do this. And so I relaxed, took my time, got up there. And when I got up there, I was sweating, like really sweating.
Gotcha.
And from then on, the trail was just kind of even, it was up and down, but it was even. And I realized, excuse me, I was like, this is not bad. And when I do this again, which I will, I'll be more prepared because I know what to expect. I didn't want, like my friends that I went with, I didn't want them to tell me how it was. I just wanted to be surprised because I wanted to see how my body would react.
Right.
And I was proud of myself because we did it. We did 3.2 miles within an hour.
That's excellent.
And we talking about a hike that was just, it was really intense, but it still had even parts where, you can catch your breath. And that, like I said, after the last, I won't say mile, I coasted.
Okay.
I coasted,
Good.
so.
I think particularly when it comes to trails and hikes and things of that nature, I think your first time around, your fatigue comes more from a mental and emotional place.
I agree.
It comes from a physical place.
I agree, yeah.
Because you don't know what to expect, so you're overthinking the whole challenge.
Yeah.
But now that you've gone through it, I guarantee the next time you take the hike, you're going to be able to navigate that terrain easily because for one, you're going to know where you're beginning and you're going to know where you're in.
Most definitely.
From as someone who's done a few hikes, the thing that I remember most is that made me fatigued. Besides the physicality, I mean that will get you, but you'll be even more tired because as you begin, you're not sure where you're going to end, particularly when you're with people. And then when you finally get to the end and you go, oh, we're at the end? So now, besides muscle memory, you got actual brain memory of, okay, I know where I started, I know where I'm going to end.
Most definitely.
So the preparation before you get there next time, you've already done that. You've already traversed the whole trail in your head. So now it's just taking your body through it. Your body is going to get through it.
Man.
It's your mind trying to figure out, like, okay, how much further we got to go? How much energy do I need to reserve before getting to a place? And that's going to even change your time frame of how you traverse it. And a lot of times you're going to do it in a much shorter time.
Yeah. Well, that last hike that I did before this one, I was really fatigued halfway through, only because I hadn't done it in a while. But hiking is something I haven't done regularly, but I have done them. It's just that this time around, now that I'm older and I happen to be a little bit more in physical shape now, I didn't really struggle, because what I had to remember was I can do this.
Right.
I have the strength and endurance to do this. But because I don't know this trail at all, I'm just going to take my time. Because my friends, they went ahead of me, obviously, because they've done this before. I haven't done it. So I said, they were like, look, you okay, Rick? I said, no, I'm good. Just keep going. I see where y'all at. I said, I'm just taking my time. So when I finally got up that biggest climb, I was like, I said, man, I was breathing heavy, but I was drenched. But after that, I was good.
Always remember this too. When you go with people who've already traversed the trail, they're taking you for one of two reasons. They're taking you because they want you to be there. That's the obvious one.
Yeah, definitely.
The second one is to see how you're going to fare.
Oh yeah, they were talking smack. Yeah, they were talking
exactly.
Smack.
They want to see how you can do it.
They said they want to see if I was going to keep up. I said I'm going to keep up. So yeah, it was amazing. Man. But that was the highlight of my week. In addition to just doing some Juneteenth festivities, and
that's good, man.
And one thing about the Juneteenth festivities, it really gave me a interesting perspective on our race as African American people, because we have so many different types of groups within the culture of African American, and the types really have to do with how we were not just raised, but the backgrounds and then the time periods in which we were raised. And just to be able to see young people today participating in these various Juneteenth celebrations, I often wondered, do they even really know the history? Do they even know backstory of how we got to Juneteenth and what it really symbolizes versus it just being an event that we celebrate, in honor of Black people. And this is our opportunity to enjoy ourselves, which, it's not an issue or problem. But I just wonder how many of our young people really know the true meaning of Juneteenth.
Well, my thought is that their backstory is definitely going to be different
Yes.
because what is considered our new normal is their normal.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
They're not carrying a lot of the baggage of old and a lot of attitudes about those time periods that were not in a bad way, but were forcefully impacted upon us to get to the place that we are.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking at it as, and I don't fault them for this at all. They're looking at it as a celebration of a situation that not just they are learning, but we're learning about too. We're just seeing it from different mindsets, different eyes, because we've had a history that has extended from the reason that there is a Juneteenth to begin with.
You're right.
Whereas today, because I talk to my son and he sees Juneteenth as, oh wow, I didn't know the history, but that's great. Just like the country is celebrating June the 4th as independence from England,
Mm-hmm.
Juneteenth for us is a celebration of independence as a race of people from the oppression or suppression of the European, or let's call it what it is, white society that caused us to be in what we know as the institution of slavery. So, because of the history of that, we're viewing it through the eyes of a different prism.
Yes, we are.
Than, let's say, maybe current generation that's experiencing seeing all this for the first time. So it just comes down to having a conversation about it. That's really it. Which leads us into your choice of subject matter for the topic of this week.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yes,
that's going right into that.
We get right into that because
why don't you go ahead and explain to the audience what we're talking about?
I will. And the reason why I brought that up because I think the audience will appreciate the different perspectives on what is kind of taboo to talk about even today in 2023, and that is racism. The topic for today for our audience is a simple question: is racism a disease or learned behavior? And I oftentimes, wonder how different cultures and nationalities view racism for their own kind. But I want to speak just general racism. I want to start just with a basic definition for those who may not really truly understand the meaning. But a simple definition for racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group. And then you have disease, a disorder of structure or in a human, animal, or plant, especially that has a known cause and a distinctive group of symptoms, signs, and anatomical changes. And then learned behavior is one that is not innate, instinctive, or canalized but rather is acquired through practice or a specific experience with an external event. Now, let's just start off with it. Racism. I'm just going to just throw it out there. I've experienced racism ever since I was a kid, even to my adulthood. And just the way it has made me feel over the years. And this is just being transparent with our audience. It didn't make me feel good because, number one, me being light skinned, right? Me being light skinned and me already having a complex of being light skinned based on being teased in elementary school. I've been called white boy. I've been called light bright. I've been called albino. Right? Now, kids are going to tease and kids are going to bully at that time of our lives, which of course are the younger years, the wonder years. And so that, of course, didn't make me feel good. But then I started to realize, I said, wait a minute, you're actually calling me names that don't really apply to my race or anything like that. But when I would look at other kids and I would look at their shades. Mm-hmm. Then I would hear people calling them black as tar or jigaboo or dark skin and whatever. There's so many different names being called based on the color by our own people. Now I went to school with majority African American, okay, few Latinos, but the African Americans were calling names towards their own people. And then when I got to college, I started to experience, well, before college, even in high school, I started to have racism with cops and, basically starting things with me as I'm out on the street, just riding my bicycle on the street, asking me where I'm going. And do you have a license? And I'm like, yeah, I have a license, but am I breaking any law? It's like, don't get smart with me. I'm asking you a question. You do. I mean, so I've experienced a lot of that. But when I got to college, I really started to experience it because, one, I was in a school at an institution where the university had so many different nationalities, mm-hmm, and African Americans was the least amount. Okay. Okay. And so there were times where I experienced racism with my professors. There was times I experienced racism with just certain staff members. But even outside of the schools, I went to school in the Valley, Cal State Northridge. Not saying that Cal State Northridge, for those who are listening, was a racist school, but it was just different people that were racist based on the color. And so I had noticed a lot of that within the city. Me going to the malls, me going to the gyms, me going to the stores, and I was always being looked upon or followed or watched or even approached as if I'm doing something bad or I'm guilty of something. And so it impacted me. But when I started to really learn and understand what racism is really derived from and coming from, it helped me to focus not on what's being said, but why it's being said. And then understanding that in order for me to not let it impact me, I would have to not allow it to based on not responding to it. Because again, I just believe that racism will get anybody into a place where they're either defensive or they're in an entanglement or they're trying to battle or just trying to defend. And so my question to you is as it relates to racism from your perspective, do you see it as a disease or do you see it as a learned behavior?
You know, it's interesting because you and I both have the same. We must have both Googled racism because I have the exact same definition. The only thing is, I added a few things to that, and I wanna delicately unpack this in a very succinct way, so that way people understand. I could easily say, does racism exist? Of course, it exists. However, let's break that down a little bit. And the reason I say that is because there's a part of the definition you said, institution against a person or people. And I really paid a lot of attention to that for the simple fact that in my mind, and in some cases I've read where it's been proven that racism in and of itself, even though it has the words prejudice and discrimination in it, those are very simplistic terms to ascribe to racism, because I believe racism actually has a power structure to it. And that when it says institutions, it makes a lot of sense because you have to have, or at least be wielding some type of power,
yes,
in order to execute racism or the racial act or that you're trying to place on a group of people. Another thing it says typically it's we can attribute this to one group that and typically that wants to marginalize another group.
Yes.
And it's used to define superiority of one race over the inferiority of another. I wouldn't go as far as to respectfully, I have to say, I would disagree with the disease part for the simple fact that I don't think, and I'm going to look at your definition again of a disorder of structure in a human. I mean, I could see the disease of being an affliction of your physical being, but a disease of persons against another person. How I see it is that racism clearly to me is under the umbrella of fear. and that these people who are able to wield the power or authority over another race of people is simply because of lack of understanding of that particular group or race of people. Uh, One of the things that I looked at, and I use as a personal story, I had someone say to me years ago that they saw the movie Avatar. And these happen to be colleagues of mine that I work with. I'm going to, use white for the audience, but European-based individuals. And they said, "Hey, did you like Avatar?" I said, "No, I haven't seen it." They said, "Oh, you got to see it. It's the best movie ever." Blah 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 blah. So finally, I went and saw it, and after seeing it, they said, "Well, what did you think?" I said, "Well, it's a centuries-old story of one group feeling that they're superior over another group, and they go and they uh, overpower that group of people and then take all the resources of the land." And the people I was talking to said, "What?" I said, "Well, the planet that they went to, uh, they wanted to conquer the people, take over their resources, and take them back to Earth." I said, "That's the whole story of Europeans going to Africa, taking the people as slaves, which would account for no wage labor, uh, stripping the land of all of its resources." Now, what was interesting when I explained that to them of what my view was of seeing the movie, that was not their view. They saw it purely from an entertainment perspective. But then I saw that they were really down when they heard my perspective, and I realized something at that moment, that the perpetrators of racism uh, cannot be ascribed necessarily to the descendants of the people who did the crime.
Exactly.
Because the people who did the crime did it with full knowledge and, in my opinion, the truth of what they were doing. And so in today's world, I look at it a little differently because we can say racism and so forth. But when I talk to different people, now, again, this could be what I consider woeful ignorance on other people's parts who are descendants of people who have uh, put these racist structures in place against people of color or marginalized people because they happen to be a minority in a situation. Because here's the thing, right now in America, people of color are becoming the majority. However, because it's been so ingrained mentally, even the majority, which is the minority now, thinks of themselves as still the minority.
Yeah, it's
And
a
so
mindset.
it's a real tricky puzzle for me. I'm not saying for anyone else, but for our listeners out there, uh, you have to do a one-off situation when it comes to racism now, and not give it a blanketed effect. Now, I understand that for certain things, like right now we're going through, well, what about reparations? That in and of itself is going to be a real conundrum and problem going forward,
Yes, it
because
is.
you're now trying to uh, get people to repay you for crimes of past that were inflicted upon, as a black man, my ancestors, by the ancestors of the white people that I know now. But they feel like, well, wait a minute, I didn't do the crime. Why do I got to do the time? And why do I got to repay you for something that was done so long ago? So that's going to be a situation, in my mind, it's going to go on forever and a day, because for every pro for reparations, there's going to be 5 or 6 cons as to why it shouldn't be. And not even from the other side always, but particularly it could be within our own ranks. Because we have people, like you said, because you were light skinned, people call you different names. Well, if we go back, historically speaking, I'm not a scholar on this, but there was an individual by the name of Thomas Sowell who, and I hope I'm saying this right, taught how to have division even amongst one race. Put the light against the dark, the young against the old. So we have so many divisions within ourselves that we need to work out, that we need to get that somehow all together in order to pursue what we feel is rightfully due. As I'm listening to you talk, you were saying you were teased for being light. Well, as a kid growing up, I was teased for being brown skinned with curly hair.
There you go.
That was like within our race. Like, how is that even possible?
How is it even possible?
How you brown and have curly hair? So I had it a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying with that. It's just.
But this is the thing, George. That's the reason why I proposed the question. Is racism a disease or learned behavior? And so I'm not saying it's one or the other, but there's so many similarities to disease and learned behavior. The reason why I say that is because when you look at the origin of a disease, it's a result of something.
Right.
Okay. And it's something that has either been crossed or put into.
Right.
Okay. So when you look at hate,
okay,
and you look at fear, if you put hate and fear together, then you're going to have a mixture of something that's going to be a result of. And so I believe that a diseased mind is contaminated based on what has been put in. But then, of course, once it's put in, then it's put into a position where it's now become learned behavior.
Gotcha.
Because now whatever just like, for example, when you look at the different commercials today on how to fight different diseases, let's just say HIV. Okay.
Right.
You have all these different diseases, and you have these convincing, commercials showing people living with it. And as they're living with it, doing their everyday lives,
almost in a celebratory situation.
Listen, that's why I'm bringing this up. You're showing these people on the screen how wonderful and happy you can be living with this disease as a result of what you put into your body. You and I both know you worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a very long time, and me being in the health and wellness industry for some time, we understand what drugs do to the body.
Of course.
So when we understand what drugs do to the body as it relates to making your body become immune to whatever symptoms you already have, and then deadening your organs, you become more diseased based on what you put into your body. So when you look at racism, it's a very touchy subject, but it's a subject that a lot of people don't really dig deep into, because now it becomes personal and it's a sensitive matter, because no one really wants to take responsibility for what was done in the past, because no one has any accountability in the present. All you can really do is be accountable for now. Like, I can easily say, yeah, I'm light skinned. I know my bloodline. I come from French background. I come from Black background. I come from Indian background. That's the reason I'm light skinned. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So so basically, because I know my ancestry, I also know how that happened. Now, I can easily walk around and just be mad at the world, be mad at French people, white people, Indian people, whatever. But why would I do that when that's not my reality? My reality is what I look at, what I see in the mirror. But my reality is also, my reality is how I deal with life today. I look at people much differently because that's what I was taught to do. I was also taught to treat people the way you want to be treated. And if someone chooses not to, you don't need to spend and waste your time trying to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. You just basically keep it pushing. And so I just believe that racism has created so much trauma, so much drama, and so much struggle, but it has kept people from really progressing forward versus still living backwards. And the cure, my question is there ever going to be a cure for it, whether it's a disease or a learned behavior? Because as much as we like to say, George, we've made progress and we're moving forward, I'm not so sure about that. Because if we've made progress and we've moved forward, then why, like you said, the political structure, why is that still in the favor of those individuals who have created the division and who have basically I would say, created the racism, if you would, based on the generation.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were speaking, you made me think about something that was in the news actually of late. And when I say of late, within the last year. And when I think about racism, I think about ignorance at its finest.
Definitely.
And where you would even divide the two, I'm not quite sure. But it made me think of the story of Bruce's Beach.
Oh, yes, right there.
Manhattan
Man Beach. There you go. That's
the
it.
land that was taken away from the family many, many years ago. The black family finally got it
Finally
back.
got it.
And they said, this is our just due. And I thought, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Because now what you can do is you can start to give yourself reparations.
Give yourself reparations.
Because now what you do is you just say, okay, well, city, there, because of this constructs that have been in place, and because this is their family was part of the victimization of people through institutional racism. Great. Now we're going to make you pay us back, because what we're going to do is we're going to not only have this land back in our family's ownership, but now we're going to charge you for use of that land because we're not going to do anything with it. What was really disheartening to me was just about a month or two ago, I heard that they sold it back
yep,
for $20 million.
Sold it back for $20
which is
million.
pennies on the dollar
Pennies
for what
on
they
the
could
dollar.
actually get from this land. And so when I hear our people cry and complain about their just due, but they give it back for pennies, I'm kind of at a loss of words.
I didn't understand that when I heard
What?
that either. I said to myself,
do you know how finances even work? You can release this back forever and a day and keep it. And the thing that I thought about, the biggest thing, because my wife asked me, why do you think they sold it back? I said, because it goes to the old adage of crabs in a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as one gets to the top, you got another one pulling them down.
Yep.
She goes, what do you mean? I said, I can only assume, I can only imagine that the family got together and they had squabbles internally about who gets what, and decided, let's just sell it back
so we can
and we divide up all the money. Not looking at the bigger picture of,
and $20 million.
this is the barrel that can feed our family for generations.
They didn't look at it like that.
And so when we have things and we march with Black Lives Matter and we do this and that and the other, I always say, why are we our own worst enemies instead of saying, hey, okay, I don't need you to send everybody a check. I don't. I would prefer, if you want to do a with a reparatory type of situation, then do this. Give me free health care for my family for life.
There you go.
Make my taxes half of whatever it was.
It is. Exactly.
Give me things that are going to be substantive.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
That's what's equality and fair.
Yeah.
You give me a check, all I'm going to do is what? Most of us, not all of us, are going to put it right back into the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And then cry at some point again later that it was unfair. Okay? So that's why this is it's not even a touchy subject for me. It's more about how do I wrap my arms around, regardless of whether, here's the thing. Yes, it is a disease. We're going to have some people out there that are taught by their fathers, their forefathers. But if you really look at it statistically, the numbers of those people are even really, really small. And I know you have this in your family because I have this in my family. It's real hard for me to have prejudice against a particular racial group when I walk into a family function and there's white Amy and there's white John and there's Indian, whatever his name is, and there's Asian so-and-so, because my family is a rainbow coalition. Okay?
There you go.
And I heard it best by this white woman, and this was on social media. She's in her 80s. And she says, I don't even understand racism and division and all this. She says, because I'm here to say as a white woman, I'm smart enough to know we all came from Africa. We just all separately went our separate ways, established our own places, and then decided, I want to fight that guy and take his stuff because my stuff ain't enough.
You know, George, I'm so glad you said that, man. Because let me tell you why. I've been listening to social media from the perspective of a lot of Caucasian men and women who have specifically said what you just said from different perspectives based on their research. And for that to come out their mouths and for them to say, my white brothers and sisters, that's what they said, my white brothers and sisters, you have to get out of the mindset that you're superior when we all came from the same place, and that was Africa. And then they said, the sad part, he says, what makes me embarrassed for my own people, which is white people, it's embarrassing to see you fighting your brother based on a different shade. And the only reason why you're lighter is because when you migrated to Europe and those countries that are cold, definitely the complexion had already changed. And so it's like we are really the same color underneath, and that is blood. We're still all red inside underneath. So when these white people are given these statistics and this history and these facts, it makes me not feel any kind of way other than I've been knowing that for years because I studied it. I studied in high school and college and thereafter. And so when I get to the learned behavior part, the white generation has continued to teach hate, teach superiority, teach they are nothing, they're below, blah, 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 because that's what was taught to them. But then you got some who was always one out of many. Well, that's my black friend, and he's nice, and why can't I? So you always have one, and that one in every group of white families has been able to stand firm against that. And that's why today you see so many white people with black people as far as relationships and vice versa. And so I just sometimes I just laugh when I still hear the ignorance and I watch it on the news and I hear these, just like the white guy who in the news is like what, a couple of months ago, where that black boy, 15, 16 years old, knocked at the door. It was the wrong door because he was told to pick up his sister. And he just went to the wrong house and he got shot. Thank God he was able to survive that. But the man was like, he said he was terrified for his life. So that's why he shot him from inside the house. And so the question was, they asked him, they says, what were you terrified about when he was knocking on the door and that's all he did? He was terrified because of fear.
Well, with good reason. And let me tell you why he had the fear.
Talk to me.
Because I had the privilege of having a conversation with, again, I can't believe that they were so transparent with it, with a group of white men. And they said, George, we know that our time is coming to an end. And I said, what do you mean? Being the majority in numbers. And he said, we're afraid that you guys are going to perpetrate on us what we did to you guys.
Wow.
And I laughed. I said,
wow.
So that's your fear, is that we're going to somehow
retaliate,
rob, rape, and pillage your women and your homes. I said, here's the difference with us is that as people of color, I said, I'm not going to speak for all.
Yes.
We're not a vindictive people in
that
sense. We're more vindictive towards one another,
our own people,
than we are to you guys.
Yep.
We're not going to try to perpetrate that on you. We're actually looking, we want equality and we want progress. And those two things don't go in trying to get retribution for what you guys did. No. We're not even walking around thinking that. That's something that you guys are thinking because it's what you did.
That's it. Proof is in the pudding. That's
what you did. You think it's going to come back and revisit you.
But that's guilt.
But that's not what we're walking around thinking.
That's just simple guilt.
Hey, we're going to be able to run businesses too. We're going to be able to make money. We're going to be able to live in these neighborhoods and live how we want to live. I said, but what's interesting is because of what you guys have perpetrated down through the centuries is really interesting. Because, and you said to Ricky a moment ago, you're like, Sometimes you're doing things and you wonder, are they looking at you just because they think it's your nature to be this and that and the other? But it's not even that so much as what we even think about ourselves based upon what they told us about us. We believe more of what they said about us than we believe about what we know about ourselves.
Brainwashed, man.
You know, think about this. Why, when you walk through a store, if someone who white walks up to you and goes, "Can I help you, sir?" Why is your first instinct or impression is to go, "Well, why are you following me around? I ain't gonna take nothing," because that was ingrained in you.
That was ingrained.
I don't feel that way when I go to the store because I know I got just as much money, credit cards in my pocket, just like you. So when you walk up to me, I'm not offended. As a matter of fact, I think maybe you're there to help me. So I'm going to utilize that help to the best of my ability. You're going to walk up. I'm not assuming you're there to check up on me. I'm assuming you're there to serve me.
You said there to serve me.
Okay?
That's it.
And when I got pulled over by cops, when I hear people go, "Oh, the cops are all racist," I never forget this one incident where a cop pulled me over, and I thought it was funny because as soon as he walked up, I said, "Officer, what is the genesis of this occasion?" And he looked at me. "Excuse me?" He goes, "License and registration." I give it to him. He walks back to his car. As he comes back to my truck, he goes, "Well, I'm not giving you a ticket. It's raining out here, and you made that turn a little quickly." And he goes, "But sir, before I go any further, are you a professional or something, an attorney or doctor?" I said, "Is this relevant to our current conversation?" Because I used verbiage he was not expecting, it changed the whole dynamics of that interaction.
That's it. That's it.
You know?
Yeah.
Now, let me give you a whole different scenario. He pulled me over. "Man, why you white boys always pulling us over because we black?" Well, I'm already putting him on the defense. Okay? So now this can only escalate.
That's it.
Okay?
That's it.
But because I use something as simple as what is the genesis of this job? Whoa.
Yeah.
Educated man. He didn't even see me as black at that moment.
There you go. That's it.
So I try to say as much as I can to my black brothers and sisters. Don't always make an assumption that this is a negative situation. As a matter of fact, go into it with all positive, period. If it's something that's being done wrong, that officer, man or woman, is obliged to give you their business card.
There you go.
If you feel like you have been somehow harassed or mistreated, adjudicate it.
That's it.
Don't find yourself at the other end of a barrel because you're always going to lose.
There you go.
Your job at that point is, I want to get home safely.
That's it.
So many of us that get shot and stuff. Now, I'm not making any excuses for the bad officers that are out there, but I am saying you can de-escalate a situation, and a lot of what we call racism and prejudice and all that, we can nip in the bud. Because here's the thing: if you don't want it in your world, try and figure out the best way to get it out of your world and keep on going with your life.
There you go. That's it. Well, you know what? Time is up, but I think that you summed it up pretty well. And for those who were able to tune in today, just ask yourself a question. And that is, am I really doing the best I can to just bring equality to mankind in my own way? Because it just takes everybody to just be open and honest and treat people fairly. Because if you want to be treated fairly, then you have to do the same. So, you know, I just think that we just can leave it at that. And,
couldn't have said it better, Ricky. Everything is coming full circle.
It's coming full circle.
I have nothing else to say on that one.
There you go. Well, until next time, man.
All right, brother.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
There you go. You guys have a good one.